Hello and welcome to the CareerFoundry Influenza Staffing Plan for 2018. My name is Jeff Frankenfeld. Every year, individuals in the United States are affected by influenza, with symptoms that range from fever, chills, and runny nose, to even ending up in the hospital and death. There are certain populations affected more by the influenza, and in the presentation, these will be considered our vulnerable populations. Hospitals can experience a higher than normal influx of patients caused by the flu, where adequate staffing is required to properly treat these patients. I have been tasked with developing a medical staffing plan of nurses and physicians for 2018 to be sent to states across the country during specific times of the year in order to meet the staffing needs for the influenza season. The data sources utilized for this analysis include the influenza mortality rates across the U.S. obtained by the CDC and the country's population data obtained by the U.S. Census Bureau. Both data sets begin in 2009 and end in 2017. To begin, by reviewing the chart on the right, we can see that the total influenza deaths from 2009 to 2017 plotted via a line chart showing the trend over a calendar year. We can see that the first couple of months of the year are the highest, with a decrease in deaths starting in March. Then, towards the end of the year, there is an increase in influenza deaths beginning in September. Coincidentally, these are the colder months of the year. Additionally, according to the CDC, it can be confirmed that peak influenza season is between December and February. With that being said, I recommend the additional medical staff be sent to their respective locations beginning in September and gradually leave their residency in March. We should now discuss who makes up the vulnerable population. After some analysis, I would like to highlight the pie charts on the left side of the screen. The upper pie chart shows two age groups. One group is individuals less than 1 to 64 years old, and the other slice are individuals 65 and older. We can see that the 65 and older age groups contribute to a much larger portion of the influenza deaths. To highlight this disparity, I want to bring attention to the pie chart in the bottom left. It shows the same age groups, individuals less than 1 to 64, and individuals 65 and older, but highlights their overall population percentage. Even though the 65 and older age group is responsible for the vast majority of influenza deaths, they are only 14% of the United States population. To further showcase the correlation between the influenza deaths and the state's population of individuals 65 and older, I want to review the state's population. I want to review the scatter plot on the right. As the state's population of 65 and older increases, so does the state's influenza death count. For the more technical attendees, this is a correlation coefficient of 0.95, or in other words, a strong relationship between the increase of 65 and older populations and overall influenza deaths, no matter the age. With these metrics taken into consideration, I have deemed that the vulnerable population for influenza are individuals 65 and older. Now that we have discussed the vulnerable population, let's talk about where the most affected states are. On the right side of the page, there are two bar graphs. One shows the sum of vulnerable populations by state from 2009 to 2017. And the other shows the sum of influenza deaths by state from 2009 to 2017. You might notice something interesting here. If we were to sort the states with the highest value shown at the top, we can see that the same 7 states had the highest values for each bar graph. Those states are California, Florida, New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Illinois. To showcase this information via map of the United States, on the left side of the screen, You can see the same information from the bar graphs, but with the vulnerable population shown in different shades of blue, and influenza deaths shown in different shades of red. For the vulnerable populations, the darker blues represent a larger population, and for the influenza deaths, the darker red and larger circles represent a higher influenza death count. The same 7 states have both darker blues and darker reds. With that being said, these 7 states will be considered the high priority states when it comes to the medical staffing plan. If you're interested in a specific state's data points, we can easily view them here. Let's take a look at my home state of Colorado. We can see that from 2009 to 2017, Colorado had roughly 5.2 million individuals, 65 and older, living there, with an influenza death count of about 3,600. However, the metrics for Colorado are not as severely affected compared to our high priority states, so their light blue and light red metrics are reflected as such. Let's go ahead and summarize our findings with recommendations I suggest. We can deem individuals 65 and older as the vulnerable population, and the states of California, Florida, New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Illinois as the high priority states. I'm recommending additional medical staff be sent to the high priority states beginning in September and ending in March. The remainder of the United States are to be deemed the low priority states, where the normal or slightly larger hospital staffing is sufficient to maintain an adequate amount of nurses and physicians throughout the influenza season. If we look at the bar graphs on the bottom left, we can see the number of influenza deaths between September and March, which is the proposed increased staffing period, and outside of September through March. The number of deaths almost doubled in both of the high and low priority states, but it is important to note here that the high priority states only comprise of 7 states, whereas the low priority states are the remainder 43. And as we can see, both of their metrics are very similar. When it comes to staffing, I referred to the World Health Organization, which recommends there should be 2.5 physicians per 1,000 people. I would suggest an analysis of hospital visits and adjust the staff. For every 1,000 patient increase in hospital visits, the medical staff should gain 3 physicians or nurses for the higher priority states and 1 or possibly 2 physicians or nurses for the lower priority states. In the final slide, the forecasted death counts are projected. The top graph highlights the projection between September and March, and the one beneath reflects the projection between April and August. The only real insight from this is that we can see the influenza death projections are expected to stay the same, pending some unforeseen circumstance. And after all this, there are still considerations to keep in mind. I would suggest an analysis of hospital visits between the months of September and March. I also think an analysis of vaccination rates across states to fine-tune the medical staffing would be of value. And now, if there are any questions or comments pertaining to the presentation, please reach out, and I thank you for your time and attention.